my name is Jordan Sook, originally born here in Toronto, Canada, and I'm a multidisciplinary visual artist. I've always had an affinity for the arts. My mom put me into fine art classes at the age of 5 with an artist by the name of David Kabuka, who specialized in fine arts and more specifically Black African art. There's different artists that I communicate with throughout my work, as well as there's artists that I communicate with spiritually into how I approach the work, coming from all facets of art, so not just visual art, but music, dance, things of that nature. I would definitely say Kanye West was my first inspiration in terms of seeing art at the highest level. I would say I definitely communicate or try to have a conversation with Picasso, Dali, Marcel Duchamp, Damien Hirst. He's one of my favorite living artists. You know, just really trying to be a part of this sort of dialogue of what art is and communicate with the ancient ones and the old spirits and kind of just contribute to this concept of what is art. Well, the meaning and the inspiration of this show is really to look at life as a spectrum. And, you know, usually when you ask someone what the opposite of birth of life is, they would say death. But when you ask them what the opposite of death is, they would say life. But in all reality, the opposite of death is birth. And so I really wanted to look at life as a spectrum and look at different nuances and things that happen throughout that, speaking on different social cues as well as things that we as humans interact with on a daily basis. That was the main inspiration for the collection, as well as to challenge the viewers to what they perceive art to be. I would describe my style as empowering. I would consider it to be a conductor of energy, and really I just want to empower the viewer with the work that they see, and I want them to feel a certain sort of sense of this positive energy being channeled from, like I said, the ancient ones in a more contemporary sense. Really what with this piece, what you're looking at is, and all these spot paintings, is sort of a science experiment. The thing about art is you can have a conversation with all the human disciplines, math, physics, you know, psychology, sociology. And I'm really having a scientific sort of conversation here in the sense that every color represents something different. The blue can represent tranquility, the red can represent empowerment, and all these things make up the overall painting. Much like us as humans, we're made up of all these small different things that make us up, but when you look at us, you only see one full image, just like this painting here. And so this piece that you're actually looking at is less of a painting and more so a sense of self-reflection, in the sense of we as humans have insecurities and doubts and all these small things, like I said, that make us up. But when you're looking at the image, it's really just one image. And the colors that are used can evoke different emotions. When I look at this, I see a certain sense of wonder. I see a certain sense of energy. And there's a certain sense of tranquility that's happening as well. You know, it's very loud, but it's very calm at the same time. And I believe that these spot paintings are able to directly correlate with the human experience. And I think that's what I've been able to achieve here in this room. Well, in creating the collection, I went through a sort of, I guess you'd say, metaphysical transformation, and I started to perceive things differently. And so I would go into stores and I would react to the different sort of shapes and colors and textures of different objects that I would see. And this is after having my first encounter with Marcel Duchamp, who talked about the idea of the ready-made object. And so I would go into Walmart, or I would go into Value Village or these different thrift stores, and I would look at these objects and I would really just respond to how they made me feel, both in their, you know, character of shape as well as their their stature, and seeing these things in their store in their virgin state, untouched and unopened. And I really wanted to really kind of play along with that sort of dialogue and understand that consumerism in itself is an art. So when I would create certain pieces, I would really just be responding to the energy that I was sort of feeling at the time. And from there, I would develop a concept and then expand on that. And so when you look at things like the Minions, for example, you're actually looking at a conversation I'm having with Marcel Duchamp and the idea of the ready-made, and looking at this object in its state of perfection and being sort of confronted by this object that is in its immortal state. And you're looking at it through your own mortality and realizing that it in itself is a piece of art. But you'll notice with the Minions, for example, there's a use of appropriation that's happening as well. So you're not just looking at the object in itself, but you're actually looking at an overall concept being developed within it, represented through these characters, which ties in both with color theory as well as taking up physical matter. This piece is really talking about birth and creation. Remember, the name of the collection is titled Birth, Death, and the Inevitable Loss of Youth. And so I was really talking about this spectrum. And this piece in particular talks about that title. And what you'll find is that you're seeing the circle of life presented right in front of you. Seeing life and matter represented in its initial state of conception to its final state of consumption. And I think when you're able to look at it from that angle, it's very empowering. And there's definitely a strong rhetoric that is behind it. Well, I've always wanted to just be the best artist that I could be. In terms of where I want to go, I definitely want to communicate with as many people as possible and sort of share a certain message. And I feel like I can offer to that overall dialogue and to that artistic community. So it's really just, my goal is just to be involved and to participate with my contemporaries, as well as communicate with, like I said, the ancient ones, and those have, gone before us, and as well as those that are to come after us. And that is kind of my goal, is just to kind of be a part of that dialogue and be a part of that sort of communication that's happening there. Continue, like I said, to just share the work and be a part of this artistic dialogue. And we want to be amongst, constituents. And so we believe that those are the areas that we need to go to really just be a part of that creative community and reaching new villages or areas where, the art community is vibrant. And I think that's kind of what we're looking to do.